Hi, everybody. We are at Northwest University, not to be confused with Northwestern University in the States. We're in Potchefstroom, so we drove this morning out here, worked with the singers here, and liked them so much that we are going to work more with them tomorrow on a Saturday. And we're excited to see the book, as they were called here, the pukke, again tomorrow. So for today, we're going to do, this is all about like finding skeleton in things that are already ornamental. And so we're going to do some old stuff and some new stuff. The new stuff that we're going to look at is variations for Cenerento's aria Naquella Fanno by a composer called Alari. Let me just find my notes. I don't know why the piano seems to be moving on me now. Alari's dates are, if I lean in and read my computer, 1814 to 1891. He was an Italian and was born in Mantua and was a student at the Milan Conservatory. The book that this is from is called the École Vocale Italienne, the Italian school, and it is, if I remember correctly, and if I can see small enough, I just texted myself this information. This is one of 10 Italian arias that is ornamented by him and published in this volume. It is only the Naquella Fanno is on IMSLP. I have all of it at home, but unfortunately I don't have it with me. So I was happy to discover that the Cenerentola is online for purposes of today, because I thought it was a good thing. It's something that we haven't looked at before. So we're going to basically, Judith, drive safely. Don't stare at the screen and look at all the notes that Ellery wrote. So I'm going to share, today we're going to share only the iPad because we're going to be writing. So there's no, there is a slideshow, but we can, Alary, Alary, Derek can probably find the IMSLP link to the whole thing. What we have done, and huge thank you to Derek for helping me put together, he made basically the aria kind of fit the original and the variations so that we can easily look at how that works together. I try to, in my last 10 minutes here, to write the accidentals so that you'll not be confused, because the ornaments, when you see it on IMSLP, is in E flat major and the original aria is in E major. Okay, but I think that I managed to catch all the accidentals. And basically we're going to just look at how he uses units of pitches to do different turns, take different detours from the skeleton. The skeleton in most cases are very easy to experience, and we all know this aria. I think most people know it. And so what I've done is just picked certain places from it to see. So the bottom line, so this is all new work that we are working on while we're teaching. So it's not completely canvassed to death yet, right? We need to still make it look prettier to publish it, but you are the first to see it. So this is where she sings. So this is classically, right, what we experience as scales, right? And then these things that we call flips, right? So he does not vary it in this case, but he varies it here. But I'm going to immediately remind you that we discovered maybe yesterday already that an easy way to vary that, if you are not good at singing that particular pattern, is to sing instead of. So you can make that into a more scale-like pattern in this way, right? And Please, you will also see that it's clear from the ornaments of Alari that he in some ways are writing things you like. You can see, oh, the singer didn't like singing that high A or didn't like singing that note. So don't be afraid of making an aria fit your voice. They did that all the time, right? So in this case, he does not vary, but it's very easy to vary by replacing this with this pattern if you're not particularly good at singing flips. Here is a good example. Very often they will do this thing that you will start to see that the ornament kind of happens in contrary motion. Like when the original goes down, they go up and then come down. So here the singer ends up on a G sharp higher, and instead of singing, which of course is a repeat of what she has just sung, she sings which is, instead of with this pedal D, with a little mordent and then a little acciaccatura on it. Yeah, might seem very complicated, but if it happens to be a thing that your voice likes to do, if you like this ornament but you don't like that acciaccatura, leave it out, right? So it's easy to see how he goes about using the same patterns that we've been studying for the last 2 days. Okay, I shouldn't skip this one. Sorry, let me just make sure that Derek taught me this new trick, and I want to make sure that I'm not skipping pages. This is very often sung in practice. Yeah, people sing this in different ways, so don't be confused. Very often that is happened so that can come in an extra breath there, but the original just has this. We've often talked about how often coloratura starts with turns, right? So here we have the skeleton. Right, so if we have to say where are the harmony notes, you see that these are the harmony notes and these are blue ones, yeah? I'm not going to go through all of it, but you see. Right, everybody can understand. Yes, Derek says, please note that the fermata is not on one note, right? That fermata that he writes in Bernreiter, we sometimes will see this kind of thing, which basically says everything is stopping. It really comes from the convention to put the pause and maybe sometimes with the words col canto for the orchestra, right? And then they kind of write on top of that in the voice part, also put a pause, right? It's like freedom, things gonna happen. But everybody can hear. Sorry. If I play this, everybody can hear that E, and the chord terms are E, G sharp, B, the 7th D, and in here we get to A, C sharp, E, right? So you can see how this 4-note pattern starts on the appoggiaturas. Then this is harmony note. Sorry. E, and here we find the G sharps and the Bs, right? Everybody see how that in the original, and this now is already coming to how we are constructing cadential moments, coloratura, and also how we're going to practice singing our coloratura. You see that this is all breaking down into groups of 4, and maybe if I take out this, you can see sometimes if I make, oops, let me make this smaller. Well, again, if you have an iPad, this is like a good thing. You know, you can do this to just help yourself see where the groups of 4 are, yeah? Because now you can kind of see where your anchor points are, because this is harmony. This is harmony. But you see that the harmony here is displaced again, and that when you sing, that these notes are blue. And so if you are not a crack coloratura singer yet, these are things that you want to note. That, sorry. Most people are probably going to be pretty good at singing those because they hear. And of course, as we say, the blue notes, the appoggiatura, the dissonance always helps you to shape your coloratura, right? So when you sing this, you're not just going to sing all the notes the same length. You're going to sing. Want to feel those dissonances. Okay, how does he vary it? He starts in the same way. He again sings a turn, but he turns already on G sharp. And this is a very good trick to learn, that if you're like, I don't want to sing that B, you can turn earlier and figure yourself a different way to end that that coloratura. Yeah, so again a turn and then an appoggiatura. We often talk about in scales they can run up and down, but very often if you have things, you will see different kind of patterns. You won't see arpeggios going up and arpeggios coming down. So we very often see the patterns kind of juxtaposing on top of each other. The simplest variation maybe is up here, the next one up here. But again, important to understand, I see David talking about like propelling the stuff, to see here which of the 4 note patterns, and you see that here already employs this same system that I just showed you to like white out those beams and not all just put them together. It helps you see the 4 note groups. And what can you do to help practice that? Doobie 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 doo, right? Because doobie is going to make yourself into groups of 4. Sorry, there's that's one group of 4. Right, so here we have harmony, 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 blue. Yeah, cool. Ornament. We are not at cadenzas yet, but since the cadenza is here, I was like, we might as well show. This is a quite complicated cadenza and quite chromatic. As you can see, this is the place where cadenza always on dominant 7. That's where that pause is there. That is bel canto cadenza on dominant 7. Everybody knows Baroque cadenza is on the 6/4 chord. I was told to call it the tonic 6/4, but I understand that not everybody calls it that. So here is the cadenza, or 2 cadenzas as suggested by Alieri. You're all the time during the cadenza going to try and feel B7, and let's write the note names in case that helps us. B, D sharp, F sharp, A is the 7th, and you might see a C, C sharp or C, right? Which are the 9th of the chord. So here you see the first variation, a 3rd up, broken chord or arpeggio coming down. Here comes the cadenza. I played slow for now, also because it's hard to play. Okay, let's have a closer look at these 4 note groups. What do we see? If Derek was making you sing it, he would say, turn around F sharp, turn around D sharp, turn around B, right? Because you see that it's the notes of a turn. Sorry. with chromatics at the bottom. So it is the main note, you see here, F sharp, with the lower and upper note and back to the main note, right? I should make them blue. And that pattern just continues. So you see F sharp, D sharp, B, there's the 7th, there's the 5th, there's the 3rd, there's the tonic, okay? Now, if you're not thinking about this in a harmonic way, you're probably dying trying to learn this cadenza because you're like, these notes, what is this note? No, because what it is just, that is just the 7th coming down. So if your ear has practice, turns up or down, you can understand that how those notes are just rearranging of the chords, right? Before we have this is clearly for a singer who loves arpeggio, yeah? And then these rearranged 4-note groups that turn, ending with a scale. Okay, and on top we have another possibility, and here we're going to look for our chord tones again. And where are we going to find them? We'll find them displaced. I cannot tell you how important it is to get this about ornamentation, about coloratura singing, about cadenzas, all the things, because this cadenza, right, is the same. You remember every time Derek makes you say, here's the skeleton, 1, 3, 5, sing an appoggiatura on each. You see why that exercise is so important. I know it drives you crazy, you know, Derek, it's so hard, but it's so important. Scale full the way through 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. And how does it end? First, ignore the acciaccatoras. Pretty cool cadenzas, I must say. See, there's the D. Let's mark them again. D sharp, B. You see how the A is hiding in here for me. This is your harmony note. Any questions so far? Just cool stuff, yeah? I mean, it's not, it's, the purpose of it, right, is to continue to show that these same tools are taught by everybody in order to construct ornamentation. These are simple examples in a way. Here he does show how the appoggiatura takes the place of the main note, right? Something we have talked about a lot now. And he makes tiny little things here by putting extra little turns that instead of just this, you write these upper notes with it, which can be very effective. It's a very simple way to kind of lift the voice. Instead of just F sharp A, it's like F sharp B A with that upper note. And that makes us, and everybody who knows the aria knows that this happens only once, right? So this is a variation, not because it's repeated, but because it's a play with what the composer has. Okay, now the variation itself, which is in preparation now for working with Derek and writing new variations on the skeleton of Come il Candore. Let me just make sure I have, no, I don't have all of it, but I have lots of it. So this is, right, which is basically a play with arpeggios again. I must say, I don't think I know one singer is going to want to sing that ornament. it's hard, yeah. It's a very particular kind of thing. I see that, I'm like, whose variations are these? It's Alary, Alary. It is, you can also buy it at, what is it called, AB Books. I just saw that a copy of it is actually on sale for like $27 if somebody wants to get on it. And I don't have the rest of it because it's not varied. Sorry, for some reason this ended up twice on my, this is a very often used variation. Or there are some combinations of this we hear in this aria all the time. This also, a classic ornamental pattern. If you have ever sung a bel canto aria or heard it, you've heard some version of, instead of, you can sing. Whether you sing Lucia, you know, you hear this ornament kind of all the time, is like going, continuing the scale up and coming down in the arpeggio. This is kind of ornament is why you want to practice your arpeggios. Okay, now we're into the scales. This I find a pretty interesting ornament because we're so used to hearing the 2-octave scale, yeah? And here he kind of runs away from these exposed A's for the singer in both the scales and writes, yeah, so more middle voicey, more interesting, harder the coloratura. In fact, again, it's basically a scale, right? A turn, then a jump, and this is a non-harmony note, so you can think about it as like turn around beyond. Not really a turn, yeah, but you know what I mean. It's like it's upper note. I shouldn't rush myself. I'm tired and then I get rushed. And then you see the same kind of flipping again. Instead of we go the other way. And you know how I said that sometimes you will see this happens and then the ornament does that? Because if the audience's ear has heard this motion before, it's very effective to make the audience's ear now hear the opposite. And here we see our trusted 4-note turn friends in its inverted form. A little scale, and then flips, arpeggios coming down here, yeah? Okay. Here, this one I find interesting as well, because we can say this bar here, I would not call particularly an effective ornament if you're trying to show that you are varying, but it's a very good way to sing a different pattern if your voice doesn't want to sing this one. Because some voices have trouble. This idea of like turning back up here can be problematic for voices. And by turning this around and putting these instead, many voices will prefer to do one over the other, right? And so this again is facility in replacing one pattern with another pattern. It's going exactly the same route. It has the same basically lowest and top note. It follows the same shape, but it is a different pattern vocally. Yeah. Here comes the reason that I know Alary, because this is a quite famous ornament, because the original here, oopsie daisy, I wrote on 2 pages, the original here has the 2 descending scales, and I always say that this is like a gymnast who instead of just doing two, you know how they do the floor routine from one corner of the mat to what is it called, the mat, the floor, one corner of the floor to the other corner of the floor. It's like you can see the gymnast go from one corner of the floor to the other and then do a reverse tumble routine, right? You know how exciting it is. They get there and you're not expecting them and they tumble back the way they came. When I hear versions of this ornament, I always hear that, because you don't expect the voice to come right back up that scale. Yeah, super fun ornament. Somebody want to tell me, how can you simplify the flips? Rearrange the notes by doing what? By singing A, B. Next note should be, if you want to simplify it. If you suck at flips, somebody writing me in the chat or shouting it out. Instead of A, B, G sharp, A, you sing A, B, A, G sharp, right? So you can always simplify a flip by creating this pattern instead of, yeah, just depends what your voice. If you're Nicholas Simpson, you want to sing a flip. Most people prefer singing that kind of. Okay, love this ornament. Some versions of this ornament we also hear, but I like this one very much. What is this written to show off? Quick access into the chest, yeah? Those notes are clearly added to be like very fast access into the chest. And then we will see some different options here as well. Sorry. He writes the original here again to just clarify that the appoggiatura is always written as a little note, but is sung like this. Very, very effective ornament, this one, because it brings syncopation into it, and it has different note values. So if you can get good at writing this kind of ornament, yeah, very, very useful. Okay, so now you've had your fill of ornamental patterns by Alari, and here comes my great friend Derek Goff to come and play with writing new patterns for page 220 in the book. So we're skipping ahead a little in the book because this is part of ornamentation. Hey, TG.
Okay. I'm gonna try to do it from here.
Oh, okay.
Just because I'm used to
Derek is used to his own iPad.
Okay. Yes. I want to continue.
I'll take my iPad and I'll take part in the games, the variation.
So you can all now see this screen, yeah. So I thought the first thing that we could do, and you can hear me, right? Okay, good, great, or good or bad, I don't know. I thought the first thing that we should do, rather than write a variation that runs like. So if we take Vakai, who wrote, because we know one of the things that singers did, if they weren't great at coloratura, is they would simplify, right? So what we did is simplify this into the third line of the page from the top, or the fourth from the bottom, which is the eighth notes. And how did we get that? Who can tell me what that is from? Where did we make up those eighth notes from? Well, we didn't make them up. Where did we find them?
The chord.
The chord, more specifically, the consonant notes of the skeleton of Vakai's melody, right? We turned into, and then became. left the suppuratura into. So what would happen if instead of writing a different, because remember variations just fill in harmonic patterns, right? So we're not ornamenting a melody. We don't have to ornament. We could even play around with what this eighth note structure is and then write a variation on that, right? So if I were going to write, I need all the input, I need all the help. I have good news. For every one of these bars until the last two, there are literally only 3 notes you could probably choose. So you cannot be far astray, right? So in the first bar, we're in G major. So what are our 3 notes that we can choose? G, B, and D. Now, caution, caution. The one cautionary tale of this is you want it to be single, or singable, not single. You want it to work in an order that will work for the voice. So what would be the most kind of obvious thing to do? To flip it upside down, yeah? So we get dum, bum, 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 right? And then what happens to the next bar? What do you think we should do? Yeah, I'm gonna make my little thing just ever so bigger. Do, do, do. Then what about the next bar? I don't want to be so boring as to just flip the whole thing around. So we have. We can either sing, or we could sing. Or I kind of like that. Any votes? Da 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 bum ba dum bum fits in my ear. I have a very enthusiastic audience in Rochelle Yonk, and I have a 0% enthusiastic audience on Zoom.
Do you want us to talk?
Yeah, I want you to talk. I want you to give me some ideas, but I don't want only Oksana to give me ideas. I want Kelly and Andy and Dave and Aylan and all of our friends to give us ideas. So we have so far. High D or low D?
Low.
High. I have a vote for low. Andy Garland says low. Okay, now, next bar is the most natural thing to start on the same note, because when music's moving that fast, we don't have an eternity to find the next note. So start on the next note. Da, dum, dum. So we have D and then G and then possible or I kind of like that. Da 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 dum dum bum. C sharp A up to E and dum bum ba. First 2 eighths octave, which that would be dangerous. That would be possible. For right now, let's stick with. Now I want to know. Sounds the most like a melody that would be written. Or either one. Who picks? Down and then low, or then lower than, or then higher than da da dum. No, I do not want to share this iPad or password. Then we have this chord. Or so far we have I like it all except for the transition between the A and the G here. Yeah, so if we listen to does it bother you, Rochelle? Or yeah, that is a little bit more satisfying. Number. Da dum. Dum. Okay, now let's remind ourselves of the next four measures. Okay, now, first question, do we want to write the same pattern twice? If Akai wrote the same pattern twice, do we want to do that? Non è necessario, tu sai. Okay, so I see no. Okay, so we ended up here. So what to me seems like the obvious go-to is to go something that goes down. Yeah, so have two things, one that goes down and then another one that goes back up. So we have da 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 dum. You see, again, which of your things is not on the Wi-Fi? It's gonna come up in like another minute, I promise. Da dum ba dum da dum bum. So we have, and then we can start again on this. Or what do we think? I can be wilder than Rochelle sometimes. So we have dangerous to already write a non-chord tone. So, or we have that's just that will be the safest one, sadly. Nia, nia, nia. Back. Oksana, I saw you said you couldn't see the whole screen. Are you on an iPhone? If so, turn it horizontally and I bet you'll have a better chance. Okay, so then we have so we've ended up at I like that. Da ba ba bum. Dum. Dum. Ba. With the eighth note or not, I'm not sure. So. Or. There's no way to kind of avoid that. Otherwise, or is possible. Sure, if we're going to be wild, we can do, although we have to end on the tonic. So let's save that for here. And write dum, da dum ba, dum bum. So we are using some of the same notes, yeah? Then
I think that's sort of getting the same way.
then dum. Right. So what we're doing here is, obviously you wouldn't present the piece in an unrecognizable place, but in something where you would sing this 16-bar melody 5 times, eventually, just like if you've heard like Rule Britannia, like they sing basically an unrecognizable version of it just to show off their skills, right? So da dum ba dum, and this is building our skill of filling out harmony within the bar and still making a melody that makes sense, right? So da dum ba da. Then we have here da dum ba dum bum. So our composition of that took into has now become sorry, I hit this. I literally hit paper today while I was playing the piano trying to turn the page. So the idea is, right, you have the same experience of Come il Candore, the same kind of harmony moving through time. So if I sing Come il Candore di tanta neve, or Come il Candore di tanta neve, or Come il Candore di tanta neve, or Come il Candore di tanta neve, per un bel cuore la fedeltà, un'orma sola che in sé riceve, tutta ne invola la sua beltà, tutta ne invola la sua beltà. All right, so now let's go back into this. Sorry, I'm not nearly as patient or as good at writing the notes cleanly. So now let's fill in this skeleton, okay? What is the most obvious thing in the first bar? First of all, let's talk about what are our tools. Who can put in a chat what an obvious tool to fill in 4 notes, 16 notes? passing tones. So we would have what we had in both Vakai and my first variation could become, so we could go, what's another thing we can do? Yeah, other lower neighbor tones, flips. The danger in flips here is that we're already moving in thirds, right? So if I go, I could write, nope, you fall down. So we already have a third, so we have too much, yeah? Turns and schleifers. So back in the very first days of Akai, I could definitely sing come candore di hatta neve and like sing crazy ornaments. Let's not do that. Let's stick with 16 notes. So we basically have, the question is, what do you want to put on the two G's? Do you want dum bum da dum? Okay. So we have a scale. Then do we want that to or you can add another flip down there. Yeah.
You can ask yourself the question whether you want to keep the skeleton in exactly the place you wrote it, or you want to move the skeleton.
Right. Can you hear Rochelle when she's talking? You can ask yourself if you want to keep this skeleton in exactly the same place, or do you want to displace it? So Rochelle, if you displace the skeleton, how would you displace it? So if we wanted to take that suggestion, we could do this. So what was the skeleton, remember? Ba, ba, bum. But now this B is only going to happen at the half of the measure. And we're going to get da dum ba dum. Right? Da 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 dum. Ba da dum. Was that it or? So then we get dum. This is other note of the skeleton. Or I kind of like that. Do we think? Yes, Rochelle says the first is easier to sing, the second is more interesting. So come candore, so he, so here we're displacing the A to the last thing. The problem is that we have this C hanging out here, that if we had another beat, we would have more options here. So I'm gonna be wild and do this. No. What? Do you want to share the Wi-Fi password with Rochelle Yonk? That is possible. I want to think that there's something else to do other than. Okay, I'm gonna give in. I'm gonna give up.
Yeah, we should just be like, well, where does your voice want to go? Not where does your brain want to go? I mean, my voice wants to move in the easiest possible.
So da, 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 lest we get stuck right here. So now we're filling in. Again, most obvious thing is we could sing scale down. This one I like. So scale down. Yeah. Da-dum. That's already in the key. Come on. So. Now we have straight up arpeggio. I could sing it. What do you think?
I would leave some of those 8 notes and keep that arpeggio and then pick up arpeggio before the C sharp.
Or see, this is the ruse that I'm writing the ornaments, but Rochelle's actually writing them from the first row of the auditorium.
I'm the only person who's participating in that.
So we have. So I see F. Where am I going to put an F? F only could belong to 2 of those notes, unless it's an F for me. F sharp could belong to G. Or F sharp could belong to that E. I would be game for putting. Or. So that we put our F in here, so we would displace that G to the second half of that beat, write a scale up, so that we get dum ba da dum ba dum da dum ba da. The story of the ornaments that you see in the book is also a very long one. They started in an airport lounge with Rochelle saying, just write a running ornament that never stops. So I wrote a running ornament that never stopped without any breaths or anything, because I was like, that's what you told me to do. She's like, no, that's not what I meant. I was like, well, never stop means never stops. And I was like, okay. Okay. We have lots of choices. If you're adventurous, we have some flips for Dave. Or which abandons our original 4 notes, but who cares? It was just an example, right? It was one way to do it. It's our notes, so we can change them. So what am I doing? I'm writing a turnaround what note? Someone put it in the chat. Andy Garland says he likes the turns. I like Andy Garland for liking the turns. And then a turnaround. What's the next chord tone? A and C sharp. So a turnaround A has. I write a sharp and then I don't write the note. So our little composition of the first 4, 6, 8 measures, how many ever it is now, all of you know the words, right? Let's sing it together. And now let's sing the line underneath it. And it's not hard because the other thing is this kind of music does not need to run on a click track. Right? We know the songs. Today I played O Luce di quest'anima for a fantastic soprano here in Potchefstroom. And if I went O luce di quest'anima, delizia amore vita, she'd be as dead as you would be if you were singing without any time. But the point is that now if you sing line 4, which is the original, it's still the same experience of the harmony and some fast notes in it. And that is why that lesson is called what? Introduzione. It's the introduction to runs. And the top 2 lines are the runs.
Okay, now we're going to write only for our closing game. For our closing game, we are going to write 2 new lines to Ach ich fühl's. And what we are going to attempt to do is to be very efficient in seeing how we can accomplish that. Not everybody on this call has seen this deconstruction. So I will just going to do a couple of lines. So as I said, I see some of the Turkey students online. This is the Pretoria students we worked with yesterday. So we see here Mozart's line in the middle. The deconstruction of it, which is the teal arrows are showing you this Wi-Fi password thing is funny. The teal arrows are showing you how the skeleton maintains a connection to the variation or the ornamentation, or I should say in this case. The skeleton is still present, but it is often displaced. Why is it often displaced? Because a lot of blue notes enter into the world, right? A lot of appoggiatura makes its way in. So Mozart. So that's exactly what you did on, right? You filled in those, we're just in minor, so it sounds sadder. You're filling it in, and you sing an appoggiatura anschwunden, which you have to sing in any case. Now, instead of, I mean, this is what Mozart did. He puts another harmony tone, and then he just sings a scale down, appoggiatura, anticipation. Okay, we're only going to do that because it's getting late. So, when we wrote the book, I had this crazy idea to write a new Orpheus, right? So what we did is, and it really is a game. I really tried to do the opposite of Mozart. I tried to do except for in places where I just couldn't bring myself to do something different. So I start with a mordent. So that is me basically layering. I'm putting an ornament, a mordent, and then I am ornamenting the simple appoggiatura with another mordent. Didn't want to publish anything else in the book, but we will now write something else. Then I do not use the green note, but only simple appoggiaturas. Then put a turn on Der Liebe. So it's the same as what Derek says. You still have the same experience that this is Orpheus, even though it's quite different now, but the skeleton is the same. Now, what could we do on the first bar of Orpheus that would be truly the wildest thing? There was a few here yesterday. What did we experience? An aria starting with a what? What if this aria started with a blue? Would still sound like Mozart. If you wanted, and if you wanted to make that appoggiatura make even more sense, you could sing some version of this rhythm, the kind of breath, right? Which would give you that added reason for why you're doing it. And you would have this repeat Seufzer effect. Now, somebody tell me, what else could we do? Be wild. Be wild, but be expressive. Right, first like you could get a noun. Right, you could fill this stuff with more notes, especially like maybe A flat. Derek, what would you do? With the F? Okay, it might be like it's getting funky, but it's a good way to practice your skill, yeah? Yeah. F natural would definitely not be as funky. Oops, too much of eraser for the size that I need. What? Who is iPhone? Acciaccatura before the D. This D, are we talking about this D? Oh, it's iPhone is Oksana. I would say the better place for an acciaccatura is here. Why? Because that's the stressed syllable. You don't really see acciaccaturas, like, because the acciaccatura is what, you know, what did we call it yesterday? An emotion adder? An emotion builder. You don't want to have emotion builders on a schwa, right? So it's not so obvious to do right? But verschwunden, yeah, and it'd be a great place for an aggiatura because it would be ornamenting an appoggiatura, right? You remember those, like you remember those things that that Mozart had. That's like turns and turns, like on top of turns, right? What if we wrote some version of that? Um, 30 seconds. What about that? Yeah, it's a natural here. These are eights. That's a B flat. Yeah, could be a possibility. And always put a mordant if you feel a little more sassy. Like this idea, yeah. If you want to layer, basically making one Seufzer into two Seufzers. You see this in Bach often, if that makes any sense. You see this kind of doubling up on stuff. Right, so it'd be a good way to say like my idea or Mozart's idea. It's interesting, right, when you look at this moment, how that sounds the same, and he writes, and I write. Right, so one with anticipation, one with appoggiatura. A Seufzer is an amazing thing. It's so German, yeah? It's like in their DNA. You could put a Schleifer. It was very hard for me, so many beautiful voices live in my brain singing that attack. It's really hard for me to screw with it, yeah? It's like it's kind of used to a soprano attacking that G beautifully. Right, what is this again? A reorganized turn, yeah, that has that third in it. And you see how that also kind of results in this kind of double Seufzer idea. Aileen is like, I cannot believe these crazy people rewrote architectures. This is maybe like I love this phrase. I love the chromaticism, I love the color scheme, because you have everything here. You have new chord turns, you have passing turns, you have blue notes, appoggiaturas, you have mordants, you have chromatic passing turns, and you have an appoggiatura ornamented by a mordant. And instead of I would like to think Mozart would be like, good job, Rochelle. I would totally have written that. Maybe he would be like, Rochelle Young is a crazy person, but I find this line quite idiomatic, right? And that's kind of what I'm imagining always when I do these kinds of games, right? So you can keep things quite simple and then build on it. I don't think I can improve on that line. That line sat in my head like that. I'm going to stop sharing because we have to take some questions if any are there. But so this is we're coming to the end of 3 days of units of pitches, and what we have tried to show you is how that review that we started with, mordant, inverted mordant, turn, inverted turn, Schleifer, and then maybe what have I left out? Flips, right? That these patterns show themselves to us all the time, and when we put them in different combinations around a skeleton, that is what ends up as both melody composed by composers, by us, and then ways for us to vary that melody or if they're in fast music and they come in, right, how to write variations. I am just reminding you of, and maybe I can find just this slide where, oops, I am definitely in the wrong place now, but where, because I put it on one of these things, let me just see if I can see quickly where this lives, because we didn't do the slideshow today. But we are just reminding ourselves of this. You can see this, right? Can try to make it bigger. We ornament slow melodic music, decorating an existing melody, and we vary coloratura passages, substituting patterns to fit the harmony, right? Does that make sense? So that's what we call, so when we are writing slow ornamental music, like for Achigfils, we're basically working with a melodic skeleton, and we are fitting notes around the skeleton in an ornamental way. When we are writing variations for coloratura patterns, what we're basically just dealing with is the harmony, and whether we're writing or, right, is not a variation of a melody, it is a riff on harmony, just like jazz musicians do. Any questions, any concerns, yes, Dave? You are muted, my friend. You are still muted, my friend. Dave.
I have to be careful
Dave.
which thing I unmute. Okay. Hi.
There you go.
Alan asked a question that that I think it would be good if you could address, because it comes up all the time. And it's about, we're usually told that you don't ornament the first time and you can only ornament on the repeats. And I would like an official statement from you on that. It's just what I said.
We will just take the official statement of Mozart, because whether we're looking at Lucia Silla or the Alcandro aria, any of those things, also Handel writing ornaments of himself. There is a example of Cara Speme, not the famous one, but the other one. They always ornament already the first time, and then they ornament either more or in a different way the second time. That, of course, means the skeleton is skeletal music to begin with, right? If it is, look, Casta Diva is ornamental in itself. It repeats. Should you deconstruct Casta Diva and never sing the one that Bellini wrote? Probably not, right? I mean, excuse me, it's Bellini. You should vary it. Right, that's why we feel happy to destroy Vakai, right? Because it's exercises. But if you are singing something like that, that Finta aria that we looked at yesterday, that you can see both A and A2 are skeletal in itself, and you can dress up that skeleton in two different ways. They absolutely did that. And how do you know that if there's a lot of white space on the page? If you have slow music and you see only quarter notes and an occasional eighth note, you know that stuff was meant to be dressed up, right? This is a kind of, this idea that slow music is just this kind of long notes with no ornamental stuff. That is a kind of modern idea, right? That's why when you look at a slow movement of a Bach violin sonata, right, or suites, it's full of black notes, right? If you look at the slow fantasies of the partitas and things like that, it's 32nd and 64th notes. It's super ornamental in the slow music. There is I can't remember exactly there are specific like research that 3/8 is slow music. All slow music in Baroque is written in 3/8, not in 3/4. And you ornament that, and you end up with 32nd and 64th notes. It's almost like they wanted it to look ornamental. They wanted it to be all black, the page, right? Because that kind of makes that idea happen. The fast music is in 3/8 time and is not ornamental. Jigs or, you know, this kind of like fast dances will often be written in 3/4 time, or you see the non-ornamental styles are written in like quarter notes or even half notes sometimes. But it's these shorter notes, like they love putting more flags on it. And that's why you see all of those 30-second notes all over things like Ach ich fühl's. And so it's not, Ach ich fühl's is a slow aria, but it has many notes in it. Does that make sense? A lot of it always comes from, right, how familiar are you with the music? People often ask, how do I know if it's in the style? Listen and study. If by the time you have sung 20 Mozart arias or have listened to 10 symphonies and 4 piano concertos, you'll know what the style of Mozart is. Your ear will tell you. But this idea that you can teach a student what the style is on paper is silly. The style exists because you know that music. You know how Brahms sounds because you know Brahms, not because somebody told you a 10-point thing about how you can recognize Brahms. Yeah, there's no substitute for knowing what Handel sounds like, what Bach sounds like, and then you write an ornament that sounds like that. It fits with that world in your brain. And we shouldn't try to make shortcuts with that, I think. We should force students to listen more. We should have more listening tests. We should tell ourselves that it's worthwhile learning instrumental music, listening to composers who did write. You cannot know the style of Mozart if you've never listened to like the Jupiter Symphony or the famous piano concertos, or, you know, because all of the music made the opera composer that he was. And you miss out on the essence of these composers if you don't learn their other music as well, right? Yes, you can learn Verdi without knowing the Requiem, because Verdi in essence is an operatic composer, right? You can know the songs, and the songs are basically opera arias. But when you talk about Bach, Mozart, Handel also essentially really operatic composer, right? But you really want to know, the chamber music, especially I think in the classical styles, because those composers wrote so much instrumental music at the same time as they were writing operas. And that is where it comes from. Rossini, Donizetti, Bellini, you can really learn to ornament them just from studying their own music, because they all wrote florid music. So if you look at the A section of a cabaletta of Rossini, you know how to ornament Rossini because he has written all of those patterns, right? Does that make sense? You can see how Rossini uses that palette, and you can learn to use it in that same way. Great. Anything else? Derek and I are going to check into our Airbnb or our guest house and fall over right now. Yeah, hopefully somebody has like a gin and tonic for us at our guest house, because this day was very long. It's a very, very strange road that we drove. Like you drive for a long time where there's basically nothing, but the speed limit is like 60 and 80 kilometers an hour. And you're just like, I'm never going to get there. And you cannot go fast because police everywhere, right? And my mother told me we shouldn't record this. I'm going to stop the recording. Stop recording.